What would you do if you were to find out that a state was trying to, in essence, make Christian boarding schools illegal? Well, we're going to talk about that in the second half of the show, involving a major class action lawsuit that was just filed recently by the Pacific Justice Institute. But the first half of the show, I want to talk about the challenges that are facing our universities, our colleges, both, quote, Christian and non-Christian across the United States. And to do that, we have with us on the line a representative of Turning Point USA, Joshua Thifault. Joshua, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. It's always a joy to catch up with you.
Yes. Now, Joshua, give us a little background on Turning Point USA, because I'm going to say I am so excited about what your organization is doing and the success that they're having on invading and influencing campuses across the United States. How many campuses are you on, and what are you doing there?
So now we have groups and partner groups on 1,400 high school and college campuses.
Wow.
Which is pretty crazy when you think about how we started in Charlie Kirk's garage back in 2012.
Yeah, it's just 2012. So we're looking at, not that long, 7 years, and you're on over 1,400 college campuses and universities. You have chapters, organizations there on site. Is that right?
Yes, indeed. Those are the Turning Point branded groups as well as the partner groups. And from all of those campuses, all 1,400, we hold 10 or 11 national summits each year, with the next one coming up in Dallas, the Young Women's Leadership Summit.
Okay, you have the Young Women's Leadership Summit, but you have a number of summits across the country every year. It's flourishing. How many of those 1,400 plus chapters are just Turning Point USA and not affiliated organizations?
Right now, it's around 450, I believe. We've been growing pretty quickly, so I could be a little low on that number. But it's been exciting to see that number go from 50 to 100 to 300 to, I wouldn't be surprised if we're over 500. I'll have to check with the team on that.
Right. And then you're also partnering with other organizations. So you have a large footprint on these campuses and universities. What are you doing to influence these campuses? Because, I've heard that you haven't been received very favorably in some of these campuses, and there's actually been violence taking place. But why? What are you doing there on campus that's causing some radicals like Antifa and others to so violently from the far left try to snuff you out?
Well, we have these crazy controversial tactics like empowering a student to walk out on the campus green with a clipboard to sign up students to hear Charlie Kirk or Ben Shapiro or Candace Owens, or even to just join the Turning Point chapter. The fact that we exist is why the left hates us. And of course, it goes against their entire narrative, their entire strategy about making campuses the haven for communism, the haven for anti-American ideas. And then here we are with a presence on 1,400, putting on summits with 4,000 or 5,000 students. Of course they're going to come at us. I mean,
right. And
some of our students have been physically assaulted.
Yeah. Now, your organization, the issues that you deal with, a lot of these issues, we're talking about reflecting a biblical or Christian worldview, correct? It's like, for example, like abortion. Your organization stands up for the unborn, traditional marriage, for example, things that are really very solid foundational issues and positions when it comes to a Christian or biblical perspective. Do you feel like part of this animosity is actually geared towards a perspective that is just hostile towards people of faith as well?
So I definitely agree that that's a big part of it. There's hostility not only against conservatives, but especially against Christians on campus. The beauty of our strategy and Turning Point's mission is that we have united so many students in the entire Judeo-Christian world, including a lot who didn't realize they were really part of that worldview, around the ideas of liberty, around the ideas of promoting the Constitution, capitalism, and a lot of our individual leaders, especially Charlie and a lot of the other major influencers, speak very vocally about the abortion issue. There's no question in my mind this is not a battle between flesh and blood. and you know that.
Yeah. And I also know that, there's a lot of students actively involved in supporting your organization that actually have different, political backgrounds. You have both Democrats and Republican students who see the need for preserving and protecting the Constitution, who also have a Christian biblical worldview, who believe it's okay to stand up for the unborn. It's okay to stand up for religious freedom. It's okay to defend people who have traditional values and beliefs with regards to marriage and those kinds of topics. So your organization is not one that's I see as being divisive. I see you as being actually very uniting for people who have a basic either biblical, Judeo-Christian, faith-based upbringing, but also those who appreciate just the principles of constitutional freedoms and liberties for everyone, no matter what their faith or beliefs. Let me ask you specifically, Joshua, it's gotten really hairy, hasn't it? I mean, you've been trying to have speakers on campuses. Give me some examples of what happened. I know in Berkeley, there was something that was just terrible that happened that someone got on video. Describe to the audience what took place there and why we should be concerned about that.
Yes, at one of the UC schools, one of our activists was recruiting on campus, speaking with students in a very non-aggressive way, and an Antifa member walked up and punched him in the face. And I wish that I was shocked by this. We hear stories about things like this happening on campus all the time, but the X factor here was that it was on video. So this is no longer hearsay. This is something that the world can see, and that's what led the president to sign an executive order that threatens to withhold federal funding from these leftist schools when they don't allow conservative students to exercise their free speech rights. And that has completely changed the game for us this year.
Even liberals like Alan Dershowitz, he's known for being a liberal professor, and he's a law icon, if you will, for the left, as far as liberals, a liberal viewpoint. Even he sees serious problems and has serious concerns. He's sounding the alarm that we're going to lose our freedom of speech, our freedom to think, freedom to believe, if we allow groups like the Antifa and the far leftist groups that want to trounce out basic civil liberties that both liberals and conservatives appreciate. I think that should be a huge wake-up call. So if students say, as they say they're liberal or they say they're conservative, they all should be behind what you guys stand for, which is protecting the First Amendment rights in the Constitution. I know we at Pacific Justice Institute, we're so committed to doing that, defending religious freedom, the free exercise clause in the Constitution, parents' rights over their children, the ability to be able to express our views, not just have our beliefs, but express our beliefs without having a fire made in the quad to keep us from speaking, or having people barring the doors to keeping people from coming in and hearing what we have to say as Christians or from a conservative or pro-constitutional worldview. So, Joshua, I think what you're doing is very commendable. It's very important. It's very timely. And yet you have groups like they call them Antifa, which is supposed to be like anti-fascist, but they're the most fascist organization I've ever seen before. Any group that wants to silence everyone that believes differently, that's very fascist. An organization believes there's only one way of thinking, and they want to institutionalize this as the thinking of the state and push that on everyone. That's very fascist. And yet,
but they have to do that, though. They have to do it because their ideas don't work. Socialism and communism have been tried and failed over 100 times in 100 years. And of course they have to lie. Of course they have to fight dirty. And I believe that a long-time liberals like Alan Dershowitz want to see the traditional liberal movement in America survive and not be taken over by these crazy Marxists like Ocasio-Cortez.
Right, and they're the ones who are trying to snuff out your organization, Turning Point USA, because what you stand for is the Constitution, something that both conservatives and liberals can appreciate, the ability to express our viewpoint, whether they're liberal or conservative, to express our what we believe, our convictions. And of course, we see people having a biblical or traditional or Judeo-Christian worldview being stepped on the most right now That's what's being trounced upon. And your organization is trying to awaken students on these campuses, to give them inspiration, to stand up for their rights. And I want to encourage people out there, if you're listening to this and you're a college student, you say, hey, I want to get involved, or I see my rights being violated, first, feel free to contact us at Pacific Justice Institute at our webpage, pji.org. But also, go to the website of Turning Point USA. What is that, Joshua? Where can they go if they want to get involved? They're a college student and they want to stand up to the tyranny that which we see so blatantly expressed on our campuses across the country.
They can go to tpusa.com. That's tpusa.com. There's a Get Involved button, so if you're a high school or college student listening to this, you can click on that and you will be immediately directed to the field representative in your area in all 50 states. And that's also where you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can join the several million who enjoy our content every week.
Great.
And that is lastly where they can sign up for these conferences, like our 5,000 Student Action Summit coming up in December.
Right. Excellent. Hey, once again, tpusa.com. Joshua, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. Give Charlie Kirk our best and keep up the great work.
We certainly will. And thank you for everything that you do at Pacific Justice. You're a hero out there.
Take care. God bless. Thank you.
My name is Eric Thompson. I'm a father of 8. We live in Hemet, California. It's real nice out here, nice and quiet, not much going on. I like to play guitar and bake bread in my free time. My experience at Moreno Valley College was largely positive. I was hired in 2005, and I really had a great time as a professor there teaching sociology. I like sociology because it's the study of human beings and human behavior and the study of society itself, its changes. The administration had, previous to this, had a problem with my showing a film called Understanding Same-Sex Attraction. This video gives the testimony of 4 or 5 men who they got therapy and they were actually able to see themselves attracted to someone of the opposite sex. I presented both sides of the issue. Is it biological? Is it social? The nature-nurture debate. After the 2014 investigation, there was another investigation in 2015. The Supreme Court was deliberating on the very important Obergefell decision regarding same-sex marriage. In class in 2015, we had a great discussion about this subject. And it largely went well, except for a student of mine, an older student of mine, who objected and eventually left the room. She went to the president of the college, went to several faculty and complained. She thought all along by even discussing Obergefell, we were treading on thin ice in her mind, and she became very offended at our even discussing the topic. And I take a neutral stand when it comes to these sensitive issues, because when we're trying to tease out in their minds what they really believe, it's not good. It's not helpful for me to jump in and say, well, this is what I believe. I was investigated a 3rd time, and that was because of a grade I gave a student. I gave her a D. And she complained that it was because that I thought she was a lesbian, and I didn't even know her identity, her status. Well, I wrote her a letter, emailed her, stating I didn't know she was a lesbian, and wished her well, etc., and asked her if she would reconsider. I also gave a copy to the administration. The administration had me in their office and confiscated my office keys and had me get a few things from my office and escorted me off campus with 2 police officers because they claimed that I had violated an order not to contact the student, which they never gave me. When I got the notice of intent to terminate, I contacted Pacific Justice Institute, Michael Peffer, and he was great. He understood my position, my situation, and he went right to work to help me to sort of get untangled from the mess the district had put me in. Michael wrote a great closing brief, and he was so effective that we, in October, found out that we had won arbitration, and I was granted my job back. So I'm very grateful to PJI, to Michael Peffer. They're an excellent organization, excellent team, and they really stand for justice.
Professor Eric Thompson was fired for doing his job. He was a master about inspiring discussion in a sociology class about important issues. This professor was unjustly treated by the administration, and that's why we at Pacific Justice Institute stepped in. We were honored to represent such an outstanding professor without charge. If you know of someone in a similar situation, have them contact Pacific Justice Institute. We're here to help. And folks, if you'd like to support the Pacific Justice Institute on either a one-time or a monthly basis, we'd greatly appreciate that. Your tax-deductible donation is easy to do. It's just go to our website, pji.org. That's P for Pacific, J for Justice, I for Institute.org, pji.org. Also, you can sign up to get something that's very valuable. It's a wonderful resource. It's called 12 Steps to Protect Your Children from Social Workers, or CPS. 12 Steps to Protect Your Children from Being Taken by Social Workers, or CPS. This is very valuable across the United States. We're hearing more and more cases where children are being wrongfully taken. This is a great resource, a great tool. So I encourage you once again to go to our website. And while you're there, we greatly appreciate those of you who want to be not just observers, but actually team players and support our ministry on either a one-time or a monthly basis. That's once again pji.org, pji.org. Now, we have with us on the line our chief counsel to talk about a very important case. It's a class action lawsuit that we filed representing parents involved with a challenge to their ability to have their children go to a Christian educational school without having that school taken over by the state and oppressed by the state. This is outrageous, folks. You're definitely going to want to hear this. Kevin, welcome to the program.
Good to be with you.
Kevin, tell us about this case. Give us the background of what happened first off that caused us to see the need to file this major class action lawsuit to protect parental rights.
Sure. Earlier this year, I received a call from a Christian private boarding school in California in which they said 17 investigators and 16 armed California Highway Patrol officers with 2 canine units had just served a warrant and were swarming the campus, and they were trying to interrogate staff and students. And this Waco-style raid was instigated by the California Department of Social Services.
Wow. Okay, so they didn't find any illegal drugs, right? They didn't find any grenades or terrorist weapons. So I assume they just said, oh, shoot, we messed up. Sorry about this. Someone obviously reported this incorrectly. We'll leave you alone. That's not what happened afterwards, did it?
No, what they were actually looking for is some way to bring the school under their jurisdiction. Now, note this school doesn't receive 1 penny of government funding. None of its kids are wards of the court or in juvenile dependency. So the state still, Department of Social Services, wants to control this school and make it a licensed school. So they were looking for evidence of what's called behavior-based services. Did the school provide any behavior-based services? And if they could find any evidence of that, they could get jurisdiction over the school.
Now, this school, it's a boarding school. It's Christian, great teaching, has a great reputation, and they don't do any actual professional counseling. If parents want their child to have counseling while they're there, that can be arranged with an outside entity. But this school, it's just a school. It provides Christian-based teaching, academics. I see no reason why this kind of persecution, if you will, should be continuing the way it is. And yet it is continuing. They're not backing down. They saw that there was no counseling taking place there, no behavioral therapy taking place by the school. And yet it's still continuing. So let me just ask you, though, this license, I mean, we're talking here, once again, folks, about a private religious institution, okay, receiving no money from the government, not government funded. And we're talking about parents, not social workers sending kids there, parents choosing to put their children in a private Christian boarding school. And yet some are probably wondering, well, why don't they just go ahead and get the license? Why should they not get the license, Kevin? Why is this a violation of their rights? Or is it?
Well, if the school gets a license with social services, they have to comply with quite a lot of government regulations. And some of those regulations stand at odds with the mission and goals of a Christian school. For example, like foster care, which is as everyone knows, is controlled by social services, the students in a licensed facility are given a variety of rights. These include rights to spiritual and sexual exploration. So parents don't send their children to a Christian school for spiritual and sexual exploration. They want a structured environment where students are taught from a Christian worldview.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand how the government thinks they could get away with this, because we're talking about a private ministry Christian boarding school, and if they're required to get a license, what you're saying is that the government then would have the ability to come in and say, okay, this Johnny wants to engage in sexual exploration with another student there, another a minor. They should be able to do it. Hands off. This is a sexually free commune, if you will, whether you like it or not. I can see why this school would say, no, we don't want this. And I can see why parents would be very outraged by the fact that they would not be able to send their kids to a Christian school, that a Christian school, in essence, would be illegal in the state of California. Isn't that what we're talking about here?
Yeah, those are the implications. It would take very little change in the law to have this, for the government to reach out and go into just regular Christian schools, not just private boarding schools. And the key term, I don't know if listeners caught it, was the issue of behavior-based services. Is that is an ambiguous term. It's not defined by the statutes or regulations. But what it could do is it could sweep in just about anything that tries to change behaviors. And of course, the Christian faith, the gospel, does have that consequences. It changes people's behaviors. Right. And so that's what they're looking for, evidence that that's what they do, is try to change behaviors.
Yeah, that's the main reason why parents send their children to a Christian boarding school, is because they're having difficulties often with behavior. So it effectively would gut the basic reason why parents usually send their children to such a school like this. And once again, I think you're very wise in pointing this out. If they get away with this, we're looking at the next target being Christian private schools, just regular private Christian schools being modified or regulated. And this, of course, would be a serious trampling on the basic constitutional rights of not only parents to be able to make that choice, but also for an institution like this to be able to exist in the United States of America. This I would see as being a serious threat to civil liberties. Now, without being too micro on the legal side, Kevin, I want the audience to understand what it is that we're arguing. We at Pacific Justice Institute filed a major class action lawsuit on behalf of the parents involved in this case. What did we argue? What's the case that we made in this lawsuit?
It's really rather simple. We believe that parents, not a State Department of Social Services, are the ones who should direct the education and inculcation of moral standards, religious beliefs, and elements of good citizenship in their own kids.
Yeah, I think that's very basic. So we're talking about a major parental rights action here, that parents have a fundamental right over the education and upbringing of their children. Kevin, we're talking about that basic principle is nothing new. I mean, we're talking in the 1920s, Myers v. Nebraska, People v. Society of Sisters, where the Supreme Court recognized that parents have a fundamental right over the education of bringing their children. And yet we're also looking here at some religious freedom issues here, aren't we?
We are, and what a lot of listeners may be familiar with these cases from the 1920s. What may give them some concern and gives us great concern is that the courts have steadily eroded parental rights. We have an anti-parent legislatures across the country, and so we believe this case could bring us back to, frankly, where we were in the 1920s, and that would be a great thing.
Yeah, that would be a terrible thing to have happen. If we see this, like you say, take place, and if they're successful in California to trample on parental rights and religious freedom with regards to parents and this ministry, private ministry, I think you're correct. We're going to see this being taken advantage of by other states. I call them, dark blue states, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, and others. And then it'll be followed by other states as well across the country. We have Oregon, Washington, et cetera. This could be a serious atrocity, a serious assault on the ability for Christian boarding schools to function, and then also private Christian schools, period, when you have state legislatures that are so heavy-handed in their agenda to push ideology on children that goes totally against Christianity, but also against the ability for these Christian schools to even be Christian, in essence. And I think this is extremely, extremely serious. Where are we at right now in this case? I know we filed the lawsuit, Kevin. What's our timeline? What are we looking at here?
We've got motions on calendar in the middle of the summer, and so we need people's prayers on that we find favor with the court, and we are going to and we think this is so important that if we are unsuccessful, that we're going to be taking it up on appeal. Yes,
and I think we definitely should. And I will say this also, you don't like to sing the laurels of our legal team, Kevin, but you're a modest guy, humble guy. But the reality is, when we do take things on appeal, we do high-quality work on the lower court, but also at the appellate level as well. Even though this will be in the within the Ninth Circuit, if we have to take up on appeal, we've seen victories in the Ninth Circuit because of the great work that you and the other attorneys have done. Please keep up that great work. And folks out there, please pray for us at Pacific Justice Institute. If you don't receive our updates so you can pray for our work, go to our website, pji.org, P for Pacific, J for Justice, I for Institute.org, and sign up to get our Legal Insider case update. It's weekly, it's short, but we need people praying for this case and our other cases that we have. Right now we have over 40 cases in active litigation, and we're able to do this thanks to the support of many people out there like you who feel called to be a part of our team. So Kevin, keep up the great work, and I know people will be praying.
Thank you.
Thank you. So folks, there you have it. It's our God-given freedoms we're talking about. Now, let's choose to keep them. I'm Brad Dacus of the Pacific Justice Institute. Have a great weekend.